Yeah, it's me again. This is the second recording I'm making today. I'm sitting by my desk. Actually, it's a desk opposite to mine. It's my husband's. This is my desk over here. You can see I have a map of the world because I travel a lot and I love the image of the world, which makes it so much more frustrating, the current situation. Anyway, I want to take you through the status of some of the history and the gender equality status of Copenhagen and Denmark, of course. And I wanted to show you, well, I can't talk and, and have the technique at the same time. Anyway, I have chosen to name this the glass is half full because you can either say that the glass is half empty or the glass is half full, as you know, but I think in regards to gender equality, from a lot of other perspectives, you could say that in Denmark we have reached an equality that is pretty good. We still have some way to go, but that's always, feminists can always find something to nag about, and we should. Anyway, this is Denmark, which you won't see this time, but as you see, it's a pretty diverse culture. We have around 20% immigrants from countries that are not Western, meaning Somalia, Sudan, people from Palestine, of course, Syria, a lot of different groups, and 99% of the time we live together. There are some gaps between, the educated and the uneducated, meaning also that a lot of uneducated people or people in low-paid jobs are from different origin than Western or than Danish. The first immigrants came in the 60s, where we had we were prospering, and the success was really big of the society, and we needed workforce. So they came in the 60s. I'll get back to that. So what we are discussing here is the status of Denmark, the US, and we will touch during these next weeks on the global gender equality index also. We will analyze, we will get inspired, I hope. As I mentioned before, I would like you to participate, even though it's different circumstances than we normally have. And of course, I'd like us to discuss. And I want you to be critical and ask questions. Every question you ask makes it clearer for me and for your fellow participants. So there are no stupid questions. Please feel free. So this is me. This was taken 3 weeks ago in Kakuma, northern Kenya, where I was supposed to have a 4-week training just before coming here and meeting you in how to disseminate information on what goes on in the camp. There's around 200,000 people living there from different cultures, different countries, and there are some problems, of course. There's also some good stories, and these guys were supposed to, do some training, and yeah, they really want. This is my biggest moment is when I'm on these trips, is that they all want to take selfies with me, so I take selfies with them too. Anyway, I have worked 25 years in media, TV, newspapers. I've been editor-in-chief of a newspaper, of 2 radio stations. I have been an managing editor for TV news. So I'm one of the old ladies in the media industry in Denmark. And over the past 10 years, I have switched into media development because I thought this world is more or less finished, and I thought there was so much else to do in other parts of the world that I have switched and done a lot of work in Myanmar, in Kyrgyzstan, in Middle East, Africa, Kenya last month. Of course, I have done a lot of newsroom management and also these past years gender sensitive training. I'm supposed to do in Kenya also gender mainstreaming training, which will be decided one of these days. I'll do that at a distance, obviously also. I'm a board member and I'm a columnist in some of the newspapers here. So sort of one symbol that sums up what gender equality is and the status of women in Scandinavia is this figure that you probably all know. It's Pippi Longstocking from the novel children's book from Astrid Lindgren. And she is the sort of symbol of independent girls and women here in our culture, and maybe for you also. And I have tried to analyze why. It's because she's independent. She lives by herself. She's critical of authorities. You know, she has this relationship with the two policemen, Kling and Klang, and she's fun to be with. And she's a role model for Tommy and Annika, the children that she plays with. So these four points I would like to sort of say that they are the reason why Pippi has become such a big icon for us. The gender equality and the women's liberation movement started in the 19th century. We have these two, which are sort of the symbol for us, Frederik and Mathilde Beyer. They formed this organization called Dansk Kvindesamfund, and they were huge advocates of women's right to vote, which we were granted in 1915. The interesting thing about this is that this project was actually a project for both men and women. There was no division on this. These were the intellectuals, the radical people of Denmark, the Bohemians, and they started this movement, which ended in 1915, or it didn't end, but sort of had its peak in 1915, where we were given the right to vote, as was the prisoners, as were the people in mental homes, and also the servants. So I think you still in the US have some issues of prisoners that can't vote, but here, I mean, everybody has a right to vote. As long as you're a Danish citizen, you can vote on the national elections, and on the municipal elections, you can vote if you have been based in Denmark for 4 years as a minimum. I have friends who are German citizens, but they still vote for the municipal elections, but they don't vote for the national elections. So that's what Frederik and Mathilde Beyer, that's what we can thank them for. So we call this the first wave of independence in Denmark. And as I mentioned before, we had guest workers in the 60s. And that came because the industry was thriving. We have a 80% export in Denmark. We are, you know, we used to be the Vikings. We were all over the world with our philosophy of trade, which also was a philosophy to a certain extent, I think, of some violence. But still, it was, we are sort of merchants. And in the 70s, when this was, this miracle exploded, I mean, we were, as you know, occupied in the 40s by the Germans, but then in the 50s, we started slowly get the wheels running, and we sort of uplifted ourselves in the late 60s and in the 70s. And this resulted in a huge demand for workers, people who could, you know, be in the factories, be everywhere in the society and help contribute to this. So women were expected to go out and work. and that meant that we had to put some structures in place for them in order to make it easier for women to leave home. We had the pill. Abortion was made legal in 1972. But the fact that you actually control your reproductive rights is a huge thing, a huge and defining moment also. We also had discussion on equal pay, which resulted in the second wave of feminism, which was the Red Stockings. The Red Stockings they were doing happenings all over Denmark to showcase the inequality of men and women not being paid the same. So this is from a demonstration they had in the buses, because they wanted, they said, if we get only 70% of what men are paid, why should we pay 100% for the bus ticket? So they insisted they would pay 70% of the bus ticket. And then, of course, the poor bus driver, he drove them all to the police station, and they were sitting there in the bus. And then the police had to come and carry them out of the bus. And this is an iconic picture from that event, symbolizing the Red Stockings. After that, we had in the 90s a third wave of feminism, which was focused a lot on intersectionality. I mean, a lot on how class also defines the level of equality that you have. Gender, the whole thing of, it was the beginning of the movement of the trans, all of these different kinds of genders that are in play now. I mean, and it was also thanks to Judith Butler, who's an American, or is she Canadian? I'm not quite sure. But she was the one who, advocated that gender is a cultural thing, that you are born, but the way you are brought up in a certain culture defines actually how you are perceived, and this is you're acting the kind of gender. And I have a very interesting podcast that I have a link to on this module that you can go and listen to. It's her speaking at a conference in Denmark, I think it was last year. And she's so cool, and she has so great answers. And of course, you can read much more about Judith Butler, but she sort of defines this wave. And then here is the new wave in Denmark called the fourth wave feminism, which is the twerk queens. This woman here is actually a psychology major, and she insists that she can wear whatever she wants and showcase her body. And this has nothing to do with her being suppressed in any way. It's actually a sign of liberation. And as it happens, the body has always been sort of battleground, of course, in this gender equality discussion. It was when we had the abortion discussion, who has the right to the body? So it's always been a battle of how to control your own body and reproduction, marital rights, everything. So the status of Denmark in 2020 is that we have an overall awareness of the gender equality issue. There is all of legislation is in place. We have long maternity leave. We have 12 months. We can share between husband and wife, which some people do, but it of course depends on how much reimbursement you get from the state. And this also is a discussion on class, because if you have in some relationships, the men earn more than the women, so they naturally it's for the household that the man goes more to work and the woman stays behind. And we are trying to discuss that also and debate it. And actually the European Union helps us in the sense that they are granting now or making it mandatory for men to have at least 3 months of paternal leave with a newborn. So in this case, the European Union actually helps us with how to cope, how to navigate in this discussion on leave with children. We have very good childcare in place in Denmark. We have, because of the 70s need for women as a workforce, we have institutions, we have kindergartens, and in principle, depending on, of course, some are more attractive than others, as schools are more attractive than others, but depending on your preference, you can actually, within the first year of your child, have a guarantee that your child will be taken care of. And this, in some ways, liberates everybody, but it also gives room for socialization of children, and for children that are maybe having a lot of attention in their home, having to adapt to a certain rule of law in these institutions. We also have, of course, a high acceptance of women as colleagues. The Me Too discussion has been a little less heated here in Denmark, and this is not due to the fact that there is no harassment, because there is, and there's also been a couple of cases, but it's not been to the extent that we have seen in the US. And this doesn't mean it doesn't happen, it just means that there's a sort of a silence around it, and it's been a tricky discussion here. I wish we could discuss more. Maybe we can in one of the live sessions. I can elaborate a little on that. We've also, I think, at this point reached a certain taboo, in the sense that there are a lot of women that are breadwinners, that make the most money. And this is something that we don't talk too much about, but it sort of creates a different dynamic in a relationship if you're brought up thinking that men naturally earn more or are better educated, and this is not the case anymore here. Actually, women are to a much bigger extent accepted at the university, and are doctors, lawyers, academics. So this also changes the dynamics of the gender relationships. The image of the women in media has changed a lot from in the 50s, where it was, mama taking care of the home, to now being empowered women. This is our Prime Minister, and this is her government, which she formed last year. And as you can see, there are women. There are 2, 4, 5 women, which is not enough out of 12 ministers, but it's still, they're getting there. And she's our second female prime minister. And she's the one who is navigating us through this corona crisis. She does that brilliantly, in my opinion. It's a very, very difficult situation, and she gives press conferences, not on a daily basis as President Trump, but she gives press conferences once or twice a week, leaving the rest of it to the ministers of the different ministries, like the Secretary of Justice, the Secretary of Housing, blah, blah, blah. But she's still, she navigates through this, I think, as good as she can at this moment. It's these moments where you actually see what material people are made of in those roles. Another big role model for us is Margrethe Vestager. She is the Deputy Commissioner in the European Union. She is the highest ranking woman internationally, maybe even the highest ranking Danish person internationally. She is the one battling Google, Amazon, Facebook. When you hear there's a struggle between the European Union and any of these huge organizations, she's the one making the legal framework. She is fantastic in the sense that she doesn't take any shit, excuse me, from nobody. And she is the one who has Google or Amazon, sitting in her office, excuse me, trying to explain to them why they cannot just take out all their profit from Europe, which has been a huge discussion over the past 10 years, that there are some tax rules that actually justifies that you can transfer a revenue to your home country, where your organization is based, and that has been she has fined Google and all these organizations so much. And if you Google her, she is also on Twitter Queen here. If you Google her, you'll see that she gives really cool interviews. Also, if you want me to do it, I can find some interviews with her. She has her husband and children, big children, in Copenhagen, and she commutes through Brussels. I don't know what she does at this moment, but anyway, everything's upside down. So the downside of this gender equality is that we still have an inexplicable pay gap of around 3 to 5%, depending on what statistics you see. It's not to be explained. It's a fact, and we wish that there would be more attention on this. And like, for instance, I'll come back to that later, but like when you apply for jobs, you should do them gender neutral, so that you can't see actually what gender the person has. And well, it's still there. We work on it, but I don't know if we work that much on it. It's sort of one of the things that sort of reach a level and you don't really pay too much attention to it. There's also a lack remaining in female leadership. We still have a high percentage of men in executive jobs. And it's still also, and this last crisis has shown so vividly to all of us, that the women are still in charge of the house, because as children are being homeschooled, who takes care of it? And I have heard so many of my younger friends, talking about how they are paying so much attention to this homeschooling, and how their partners maybe are not paying the same attention. I don't know. I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't pay that much attention to the homeschooling, because I mean, we are not supposed to take over the jobs of the school teachers. We're supposed to sort of keep the ship floating. But anyway, it's still some statistics showing that women are doing 30% more of the housework in home, despite the fact that both people are out and working. So the F word is not maybe what you think, it's feminism. There is a huge skepticism in Denmark on the word feminist. And I wish you were here so you could, one of the exercises I normally do is that I ask you to go out in the streets of Copenhagen and ask about, what do you think of feminism? And you will find that both men and women are very skeptical on this. And they will tell you then, because inbuilt in the word feminist is that it's an opposition to the masculine. And the way feminists define it is that it's not, that's not the case, but it still is a word that sort of triggers the wrong perception in some people. We also have some really bad online harassment. There was some programs some years ago on TV where women politicians showed the kind of emails they get and the kind of things that people threaten to do to them. I don't know why, but it's sort of like a can of worms sometimes on Facebook also. I'm not very active on social media. I do Instagram because I think it's fun and it sort of gives an opportunity to take pictures. I do LinkedIn because from a professional perspective, I think it's fine. I do very little Facebook because it's sort of sometimes a sewer of people with bad vibes, and I don't want bad vibes in my life. I have enough. I want positive communication. And then the last one is the silence of the lack of debate that we have here. I mean, we have reached a point where the legislation is in place. Everybody can say with certain right that, yeah, we've reached a point. So that's the end of the discussion. And that's maybe the biggest difficulty for people who still want things to improve. This is just this is the image of this TV show I was telling you about. She was, before she left politics, she was a very well-known politician on the left wing. And this title is Be Quiet Woman. And it sort of shows that women are, as debaters, exposed to much more bad communication. And this is also a reason, I think, why people, all newspapers say, oh, we need women as debaters. And I know for fact and from personal experience, if you sort of go out and talk about stuff that certain people don't like, then you are really exposed to a very high degree of personal stigma, body shaming, slut shaming, everything. So this is my hope that we will change this. And yeah, that's the end of the second presentation today. And I hope you enjoyed it. And please ask me questions in our different fora so that we can discuss more. I will now close this down as it's, yeah, let me see this one and then screen sharing stop and recording stop.